Okay, so this is our George Clooney episode because he has a new movie out, Jay Kelly. I'm Karan from Los Angeles.
And I'm Alex from Los Angeles, and welcome to Movies That Shaped Us. We are two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but we're both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we cover filmmaker, actor, director, other creative, in this episode, George Clooney, who shaped our love of movies. So join us as we explore why George matters and then review the top three movies in his filmography that made the biggest impact on us. So Clooney is another one of the big movie stars, though I think there's a debate to be had on what that really actually means. I've gotten a lot of arguments with people over is he a movie star or not in terms of the box office draw component. I think there's a lot of debate on that, but I think he's clearly a celebrity, very popular, been in some of the biggest franchise movies in the last 20 years, and director and all these sort of things. So yeah, why don't you start on your experience with George? Like, when did you first become aware of him? Did you see ER? I mean, I think that's probably the classic place to start.
Mm. No, I did not see ER. I don't think that was aired in India. So I
Hmm.
think he came to at least India and I guess my kind of filmic life through the movies, really. And it felt pretty ascendant, I feel like. I mean, I'm sure, he'd been on TV for a while, and I'm curious to hear how it was in the US to kind of see his meteoric rise. But, for people outside of here who had never heard of ER, it sort of felt like this was a minted kind of leading man movie star who kind of launched and just burst on the scene. That's kind of how he felt like, even though he felt older,
Hmm.
obviously, was older than, your typical sort of ingenue kind of hero. So, you know, I- he's definitely in the affirmament of like, to me, movie stars, and you can define what that means. But when we talk about Brad Pitt and Leo and all of these people, like he's in that, and in some ways, he might have even transcended that because
Hmm.
I feel like he, at least for the 2000s and 2010s, even, he'd sort of 2010s, I should say. He'd kind of taken this seat of this kind of Hollywood elder, even though he was, he's just turned 60 now, I think. And I
Right, right,
remember him
right.
getting AFI tributes and sitting in the front row at the Oscars with, Meryl Streep and Denzel Washington and such. He was sort of this elder statesman. Everybody loved Clooney, It
Hmm.
seemed like people loved him, Hollywood loved him. He had all this power through movies, even outside of movies, whether it's kind of political opinion or what have you. Like he, there's a lot going on for him for a while. So I always, admired him and thought he was very charming and very charismatic and all of that. And then I would say over the last like 10 years or so, or maybe a little bit more, as he's kind of switched more into a director,
Hmm.
I feel like that's kind of where it started for me, where things started to go down in my mind.
Yeah.
He's not a very good director.
Hmm.
Most of his movies have not really panned out. And then it's sort of funny, we remiss sort of the old movie star persona, like Cary Grant is always Cary Grant and what have you. And at some point, and we want to create that, in our
Hmm.
times today. But the truth is that George is almost from like a different era where his contemporaries like Brad Pitt and Matt Damon, even Leo, they are movie stars, but they're not. You don't expect them to be the same thing in every movie they play.
Right,
You you
right,
know,
right.
versus George, in my mind, is the guy in the suit who's charming and charismatic, and now I'm irritated by him mostly. Because
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, it's going to be the same thing, kind of charming and a little bit smarmy and kind of self-deprecating and what have you. It's like, I'm just bored of that, whole shtick. And then the wife and the kids and the Lake Como and the whole package is sort of irritating to me for what he's done nothing wrong. I'll be very clear, but this it's just something irritating about because it's not changed. And maybe this obviously says a little something about me, but it says something about just the movie star persona type that I think we as a culture have outgrown out of that, perhaps. Like we want to see people do what they do, but we want to see them challenge themselves. Like Tom Cruise is a great example. He is always Tom Cruise, but he is challenging himself in crazy, weird ways. So we're along for the ride, versus in George's case, I mean, you could argue like directing a movie is very hard, so he's probably challenging himself in that way. But because
Hmm.
those things haven't landed, and his like acting is sort of the same, pretty much at least in my mind, I've not been, a big kind of I'm not sort of sitting rooting or have been rooting for him or rushing to the cinemas to watch the new George Clooney movie, which maybe circles back to your point of like, is he a movie star or no? Because his movies at the box office haven't done very well either. And
Hmm.
he's obviously made a lot of streaming stuff lately too, so it's sort of hard to kind of measure that. But it all sums to that, right? Like, are you rushing to watch this person's new movie to the theater or no? Um, that said, he will always be in the firmament no matter what. But I'm very excited to talk about this movie, which he's done, Jay
Hmm.
Kelly, and kind of view because it's very metatextual, right, in terms of who he is and such. So I'm very excited to talk about that. But in the heyday of Clooney, I think to me he was the Cary Grant of our times,
Hmm.
and he's made some amazing movies of that genre. Whenever he stepped out and kind of challenged himself in various ways, sometimes things have worked, sometimes things haven't, but I've always been along for the ride. I'm not of the camp of like, oh, he's like a character actor trapped in a movie star body. Like his kind of Coen brother runs of kind of making himself dirty or silly or stupid, they've never really worked for me. I've enjoyed those movies, but not because of him, but because of what those movies are, like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and what have you, or Hail Caesar. Like he's not what I'm really watching for. I like him to be the guy in the suit. There are a few movies where that persona starts to crumble, and I think those are some of his best performances. So, and there is like a dark, complicated side to him when he kind of taps into that. Then I'm like, I'm really engaged. But
Hmm.
otherwise, it's great to watch as a movie star. So yeah, that was a long rant on my complicated relationship with George Clooney. I've
It's
never met.
so. Oh, I have met him, and I want to talk about that in a little bit.
Oh, wow.
But so for me, like George was a TV star, like on ER, like that show exploded out of the gate, like the biggest TV show ever. Episode one, everyone's watching it, and he was, even though he wasn't necessarily the main character on that show, he's one of the main ensemble cast. And immediately, like everyone's like, this guy's amazing. And but he'd been working in the industry for a very long time. He'd been in other movies before, other TV shows before in the 80s. So he came to the game late. And I think
Mm,
that is sort of also helps in this it doesn't feel like he kind of came out of no like in Hollywood. It's like this is a working actor and now he got his break and now he's big. Let's try to get him into movies, which also at the time was unheard of. Like going from
right.
TV into movies and becoming a
Nobody
movie
crossed
star,
over.
you never would do that. And very quickly, I mean, ER came out in 94. I think From Dusk Till Dawn, we're talking about One Fine Day Today. That was like a year or so later. And then
Mm,
some of the movies, and Out of Sight was only 2 or 3 years later. So it was very quickly in the success of ER, was he in these movies that worked? They were hits. People were going to them. So it does appear like from afar that he sort of kind of came out of nowhere. But I think because he was kind of humbled through many decades of just being a struggling actor out in Hollywood, like coming from Kentucky and coming out here and just trying to make it and just doing all these pilots. And he would just talk about how hard it was and he didn't really know whether the career was ever going to go anywhere, but he's still trying to stick at it. I think that makes it easier then for him to not let the success kind of go to his head and that people still like him. Which is, I think, why he's so popular in Hollywood because he's just like a super nice guy. So that it's
mm,
easy for these people to be anointing him like you're the next Cary Grant, even though you've done like 10 movies. And yeah, some of them are big hits, but when you like look at most of those, they're like Ocean's 11, where it's not just him, it's Pitt and
right.
Damon and Soderbergh and all these other elements in it. So that's why I think you can argue his movie star status as a box office draw. I don't really think he's ever really had that, but he's just a cool guy, very nice guy. And I think also because most Americans, at least, who are watching ER, like got to know him on TV, there's sort of this like intimate
Mm,
relationship you build with TV people that you don't,
totally.
once you're in the movies. And Dr. Ross, who he played on the show, is pretty much like George Clooney. Like to your point, I don't think he has his persona is his persona, and that's what he gives us in everything. Now, there's been sort of various shades of that, and we'll get into some of those films today. But I think that that is like just always who he is, and people want to see that, charming. He has he kind of got rid of this after the first couple years with the classic smile, tilt the head, nod acting that
Right.
he would be doing for the first 3 or 4 years of his career. Just kind of what you want out of Clooney. I mean, my theory on what sort of happened to him in the last like decade or so, really like the 2010s, was he started getting into business with that Casamigos like tequila brand that he founded with some friends of his, just like as a hobby, not really necessarily to start a business, but it was like gigantically successful and then sold to one of these big liquor companies and he made like, I don't know, 400, $500 million. And I remember him saying sort of around this time of like, I'm so rich that I'm only going to do stuff if I really like it. What I
Mm.
think that means is he has terrible taste.
Yeah.
Honestly, like he doesn't have an agent that's like, oh, you really need to do this, or like you got to work with these directors, big directors. I mean, he has the beginning part of his career for sure, and he has a long history with Soderbergh. They started the company together after Out of Sight and things like that. But once he became so wealthy, where the acting almost became like a passion project for him, and not also a career that he was like managing, like a Tom or Julia or Brad Pitt, some of these other people we've recently talked about. I think it
Hmm.
just shows that like he just doesn't. He's not a very good judge of material. Because
Hmm.
most of the movies he's made in the last 10 years, I mean, the one we'll talk about the one today in a little bit. I don't want to give away what I think about it, but the last 10 or so years, I just haven't enjoyed really a Clooney movie in a long
Acted,
time. And I think it's literally
directed
because he
or
has no one.
acted.
Yeah, he has no incentive to make something beyond just what he likes. And again, I just think he has bad taste, and he's not a great director either. I mean, powers to
Right.
him to like if he wants to do that, trying to keep getting his directing thing going. But that's a really hard thing to do. Like, not everyone's Clint Eastwood, or even Ben Affleck. I think is a more
Ben Affleck's a
successful
great director.
actor
Yeah.
director than Clooney was. But no, I still so I'll quickly do my anecdote. I was working on a commercial shoot. It's production manager, stage manager, about 20 years ago. And it was a PSA campaign. So all throughout the day, like celebrities would kind of come in and shoot their little section of, I don't know, raising money for some famine or something. I don't exactly remember what it was for. And Clooney was one of those guys that was going to come. And all I remember beforehand, like, hey, we have to have a basketball hoop set up because you always have a basketball hoop. And Clooney is on a shoot, you have to have a hoop there. So we got a basketball hoop, put it up in the parking lot. He came in this tiny little car. There was literally a one-seat car, the silliest looking thing I've ever seen. Drove it in, and then just started like talking to all the crew and then
Hmm.
had a pickup basketball game that I was in that I got to play basketball with him. Just like shooting the hoops, be like, oh, let's like, oh, what about you? And like he was, not hogging the ball or anything like that and just hanging out with the crew, really nice. He went and did his thing quickly, like, oh, raise money for blah, blah, blah. And then he goes back, shakes everyone's hand. Oh, thank you so much. It was really fun. Gets back into his tiny little, literally one seat car and like puts away. So he was like a cool guy. I'm like, oh, he's
Wow,
like has
that's
no ego at
amazing.
all. He talks to all the crew. It's like he remembers, I think, where he came, that Hollywood
That's
is just a bunch of,
amazing.
struggling artists, basically, as most of the industry, and that he got lucky late enough in the game where he can remember back to most of his career being nothing. And so he's just like a real, I've heard no bad sort of stories about him being divas on sets or hard to work with. And just seeing that, maybe it was like an hour or something I was with him. I don't want to say like hanging out with him, but yeah, it was like, okay, shooting hoops with George Clooney. And he was cool. So
That's
that,
amazing.
I think that's
I'm
probably why people like
surprised.
laud him, at least in the industry, for this.
Yeah, I mean, not I'm surprised, also not surprised, I guess, to hear that, but that explains a lot, right? Like why Hollywood kind of anointed him, because it's not easy in this town
Mm-mm.
where it is a dog eat dog world to get that kind of like affirmation and affection that feels pretty genuine and fairly unanimous, Like it's pretty special and rare.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's
So
amazing. Wow.
yeah, so that's my personal George Clooney anecdote.
I love
But
it.
yeah, why don't we then move on to his new film, which actually deals a lot of these themes. So it's
Yeah.
Jay Kelly. Why don't you introduce it, Karan, and then talk about what you
Yeah.
think?
So Jay Kelly, directed by Noah Baumbach, just came on Netflix like a day or so ago, starring George Clooney, Adam Sandler, and a whole bunch of other folks across the movie. With logline, famous movie star Jay Kelly embarks on a journey of self-discovery, confronting his past and present with his devoted manager Ron, poignant and humor-filled, pitched at the intersection of regrets and glories. That's actually very well written, I
It
think.
is. Yeah, it sounds like his PR person wrote that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think when I heard about this movie, that he's in it because of what I shared about George,
Yep.
I sort of was like, oh, I don't know, fine, whatever. But I am a Noah Baumbach fan for the most part. Like it doesn't always work. Like White
Hmm.
Noise was pretty unwatchable, but a lot of the other movies I am a fan of. So I was obviously intrigued, and then when I learned more about what the subject matter is, and I was like, that could be interesting because this is somebody who has been in the public eye in a very unique kind of way, who's transcended just being an actor or a movie person. He's a true celebrity,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like there are like handful of recognizable faces in the whole world, and he's one of them.
Hmm.
So that was interesting. So that intrigued me for sure. And then I think, well, I'll talk about him first and then the movie. I think this is probably one of George's best performances that I've seen in a long time,
Mm.
and maybe sort of even one of the best ever, I would say.
From
Because,
him.
yeah,
Oh,
from
wow.
him. Because to me, it felt like it is the guy in the suit. You get the charisma, you get sort of the glory and what have you. But to portray this kind of inner life of like, oh, the regrets that I have and how did I get here? Am I happy with the choices that I made? And I'm trying to sort of grasp for what really matters. And ultimately it is about love and this sort of line in the movie right at the beginning, it's so hard to play yourself. Like but yet you see sides of him where he's basically like a big baby, you
Hmm.
know? Uh, all this can go pretty bad in my mind. This is not easy to do. It can be just grating, or it can be, oh, you're doing this as like a vanity thing because you're yourself such a famous person. So now you're doing this to kind of show the world, but he is not playing himself, which is sort of ironic because, like we were talking earlier, like Clooney is always Clooney in some way or the other.
Hmm.
And this role on paper might be the closest, you would think to who he is, and at least his star persona. But I actually didn't see Clooney at all as the movie went on. It felt like a fully drawn out character who is this complex person who has made choices, who's proud of the choices he's made as well. And I was very kind of admiring of that choice in the screenplay and his performance, that this is not somebody, oh, just like, oh, I want to give away everything. I should have stayed at home and taken care of my family. No, I did put in the work and I wanted
Hmm.
it and I
Hmm.
went for it. And then things kind of got a little bit out of hand. But he's trying to come back at it. But again, like in real life, if you're trying to come back to the people you love and the regrets that you have, you wouldn't just overnight change. There'll still be elements of things that draw you to that you think that you're missing, but at the same time, you like the glory. You like the showmanship of everybody kind of worshiping you in the train or wherever he is. It's all happening simultaneously, and I think he's able to kind of strike balance there so beautifully, I thought. And yeah, it felt like a full-fledged character from him. I was quite moved, honestly, by his performance, and I was not expecting that at all. I thought this would be annoying and just smarmy and him being him in some way, but there was a lot of depth, and I found him just being lost in the character. Uh, and like so many shades, of his persona that he's able to show. So yeah, I'll talk about the movie in a second, but what did you think of George in the movie?
Yeah, I thought I agree with you that his performance was really good. I think what I was kind of bumping up onto, which is sort of my some of my issues with the film too, was it is George Clooney, but it's not George Clooney. And yes, he's playing like a version of himself, but it's not actually himself. And that's where I sort of felt like it should have picked either one or the other. Like an actor that's not a George Clooney playing a part like this, where it's someone who's supposed to be the next Cary Grant. I mean, they even say he's from Kentucky in the film. They say like he's one of the biggest movie stars, and there's a third reference I think to hit. Well, obviously we'll talk about the very end in a bit.
Yeah.
But it's like okay, so then it is him, but yet I don't think his persona is sort of what they're toying with in this film, like those regrets, issues with his family. I mean, notoriously, he was a longtime bachelor for
Right.
decades. He was like, I'm never gonna get married. I don't know. And yes, he did finally find someone settle down, and he does have kids now. But like the things that Jay Kelly was going through were not what I associate with Clooney. So I was sort of like, well, then why did you cast him? Versus like Birdman, for example. Yeah, it's not Michael Keaton's career, but it's talking about an actor who was playing the superhero in the past and he felt sort of burdened by that. It's like, okay, I see how this is working on a meta way, but I don't really think this really worked for me enough on that meta layer of is this George commenting on himself or not? They didn't.
Mhm.
I couldn't tell if he was or the movie was. But yes, I think his acting was fantastic. He looked incredible in those suits, like some of the best suits I've seen him. I'm trying
Always.
to like I've got to look up like where those are, especially like the white one he wears in the end of the movie. I might
Yeah.
try to buy that, but So he like had that. He looked like the movie star. I think he did a great job of showing the vulnerability too, of like how he's always putting on a performance. Maybe like that's sort of to me what I got with the conflict of the film was right. Like you're never really know who you are because you're always playing yourself. Like
Right.
that famous Cary Grant line, right? Like even I want to be Cary Grant because he doesn't
Mhm.
really exist. And I think Clooney is very much like that because that similar persona of like the cool, suave guy who's really charming. He even though I saw that when I met him, so he was very cool and suave and charming. But obviously, he's not just a one note guy. There's got to be sides to his character that we're not seeing in the public. And maybe those are things that he's dealing with in this movie. Maybe that did happen to him. The stuff about his regret with the actors that he kind of came up with. I'm sure that was hard, like especially being in the trenches with these guys for like 10 or 15 years trying to get pilots, man. And all of a sudden now you're the biggest movie star in the world within like a year, or not movie star, just TV star within a year. And sure, most of his buddies were probably left behind, and so maybe there was something that we just don't know about. So like it was hard for me to sort of see why this had to be George in this role, I guess. But again, I thought he did a great job.
Mm. Yeah, that didn't bother me, because I wasn't trying to intellectualize of like, oh, who is he, him or no.
Hmm.
I think you cast George is because it automatically intrigues you and you buy it,
Hmm.
that, oh, this person is a movie star. But then as the movie went
Totally.
along, like to me, it was the Jay Kelly character that I was watching. But I think it's important to have somebody that you would buy as that person.
Oh,
And that's
absolutely.
he's cast in my mind. Yeah, the nods to him, maybe you don't need you maybe I can see they might be distracting of his like real life. Maybe that was not needed, but it didn't really bother me, to
What,
be
what
honest.
what about the biggest one? I mean, I guess we can kind of shift a little bit into the movie now too. Was the ending, which honestly, like, I got incredibly moved by that because I'm like, I
Yeah,
do love George, and it was basically like a montage of George Clooney movies that we all know.
yeah,
It's like Ocean's
yeah,
11, it's like
yeah,
Monuments Men. These aren't sort of like obscure things. Michael Clayton, famous scenes. They're basically showing all these famous Clooney performances while he's watching them, but they're not. It's Jay Kelly in the film, so it's not
right.
George Clooney. But I was shocking, like, oh my God, actually, I really love George Clooney. It
Yeah,
worked for me. I was kind of getting a little cheering up, be like, yeah, this guy's just fucking cool, man. Seeing the and plus, I love montages, as we talked about
right.
in all those Oscar episodes. But that again, it's like, why did they put all of his movies in there if it wasn't really supposed to be him? I guess I was just still getting a little hung up on that. But were you affected by the ending as someone who seems to not be as a little more annoyed by George? Then did that work on you? Did you almost start crying like I did?
I was immersed in the movie, honestly, and just the
Hmm.
character. I was very moved and emotional by just somebody watching his life before his eyes.
Hmm.
And I love the line. I think it's very well written, the whole movie, pretty much. But like that line of like, I something like I see my life through the movies or something
Right.
like
Hmm. Yeah, I
every
saw my life
movie
through the
is,
movies.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I think that's so true in the case of a movie star, but it's also true for a lot of people, whatever job you might have, right? You're in that job, you remember the job, but you remember all the other things that are happening that I couldn't be there for that moment, or I had a fight, or I had a celebration while we were launching this thing. So like life and work are always intersected in some way, but in the case of movie stars or celebrities, even more so, like that is like 90% or 99%, and then the 1% is the rest of it. So you remember that 1% through the 90% of the movie work. So yeah, it didn't bother me, or I didn't get distracted that, oh, this is George's filmography
Did you get
for
moved by
whatever
it though?
reason.
Did you get moved by it or not? I got surprisingly moved by being like, "Oh my God, I love George Clooney." Like, even though it just was surprising. I guess I didn't know how much I loved him until that little
Yeah,
mod. It
I
worked on
didn't
me. That's all I'm saying.
I was very moved, like I said, but for Jay Kelly and the relationship
Mm.
between him and Adam Sandler's character.
Hmm.
But I wasn't, because you're right, like that moment, if not done well, could be kind of distracting and pull you out of the movie, right? That,
Hmm.
oh, now you're thinking about George and his filmography, which sounds like happened a little bit to you,
And
but
but I did that, but it actually made me enjoy the ending a little bit more because then
okay.
I'm feeling what the character's feeling, but I also have this reverence for this person's career, which the other people in the audience are feeling, right? I think he's
Right.
feeling a mix of accomplishment, but also regret, that
Regrets.
sacrifice of all the things, that he couldn't do because he had this incredible career, which I'm sure is stuff that he probably wrestles with, right?
Yeah.
We don't know that, but so I could sort of experience it like the audience member and also understand why what he was going through. And I think that was honestly I say a lot. I thought the movie was okay overall. Like I wasn't super fan of it, but I didn't also think it was kind of bad. It's like a, 3 out of 5 stars, but the ending was fantastic. And I think you want to end on a good note. So when you stop, you can't leave the theater because I watched it on Netflix. But when I closed the window, I was like, oh, that was actually really nice. Like you want to leave on a positive note
You
instead
want
of
a
like a,
positive
ugh,
note for sure.
okay. And that really worked for me, especially that last line of like, can we take it from the top or take it again or do another take
Right.
or
Do it
something? I thought that
again.
was really, really, really touching, and how they
Yeah.
had all of his past sort of friends and family in the audience, sort of. So he was sort of understanding, the sacrifices that he and that they made too, right? His
Right.
kids didn't have a dad because he wanted to make
No.
this movie career.
Yeah, no. No, I'm glad. I don't think the movie is perfect. We can talk about the movie now. Like
Yeah.
it's uneven for sure, but overall, I think I loved it. I loved it, I would say. And
Oh
I'm
wow.
I'm
Okay.
actually quite intrigued to watch it again, even though it's uneven and there's some moments where I'm like, huh, what's happening? Why are we doing this? But I think what I really loved about the movie is that it is kind of pitched at this slightly surreal kind
Mm.
of filmic language kind of way, like from right from the get-go, everyone's talking over each other,
The
people are coming
Altman
in,
stuff in the beginning.
very
Yeah.
awkward stuff, but even a little bit more because it's so polished looking, right? Because Altman movies sort of look a little bit shaggy. This
Mm-hmm.
is not shaggy, it's very polished. It almost feels like you're watching like a Broadway show of like, people coming, which I think makes it kind of interesting and surreal. It's almost like we are watching the movie of George Kelly's life. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm.
stays that in a way. Like it felt very meta in that sense. Not so much about George, but just like we are watching like a stage play of, his entire life, which I think is important because otherwise the movie would become too self-serious or
Mm-hmm.
too saccharine, right? That, oh, I'm like reflecting on my life and blah, blah, blah. So I thought I was very much kind of unsettled in a good way, but also like geared up for like what's going to happen. I think that was very clever from the get-go.
I
Um,
agree. And then also that wasn't, I thought that tone worked really well. It was sort of a mix of like the player and then also like
right.
day for night. But I was like,
Yeah.
oh, is the whole movie going to be like this? And it wasn't. So I'm like, oh, they're just sort of putting you in the world. And then it sort of turns into some more sort of like surrealistic thing once they get to Italy and sort of at the end of the movie. It turns into something a little different. And I love the flashbacks, how they handle that.
I was going
Having
to
him,
say that.
yeah,
Yeah.
walk into another room and he's in the past and you see him seeing himself. And also, oh, one other thing I say, I give this movie huge props for, they cast an actor to play himself as a young kid. They did
Yeah.
not cast him and try to age him down or any of that
I was
bullshit.
very happy to
I
see
was like, oh
that.
my God, thank God. It's like other actors playing these
Thank
younger
God,
parts. Yeah.
exactly. And he was the guy that they chose was so great. Like he
Hmm.
didn't exactly look like him, but he captured the essence of who the person like I've totally bought that. But yeah, I think the whole like train metaphor I think is very interesting. Like when you're on trains for a long trip, you're sort of there, right? There's not much else to do, nowhere else to go, and it's going in one direction and that's where you're going. And in a way every compartment is sort of this kind of journey that you can be on. So I thought that pairing with like opening a door into your different past chapters of your life was very smartly done. Again, could be so saccharine and sentimental, but it felt very interesting and moving to me, as he's going through these different chapters of his life. And then the setup, I think, was very important of like, as somebody who has been in the movies his whole life, doesn't really have a family life that's kind of established pretty quickly. The father figure director that gave you your big break is probably closest to family that you have.
Right,
And
right.
I think his passing, and also I love Jim Broadbent, such a great actor. Like just in that one scene, they're able to establish that, oh, what would trigger this? And then to meet like an old, friend who is also kind of a competitor actor from your old days, kind of come back in your life, which again could seems kind of, it seems very believable to me, right? Like that would happen, that somebody would be there. And then that sort of triggers all of this. I bought all of that. And that scene with Billy Crudup is, I think, pretty stellar of how that I was at the edge of my seat of like,
Hmm.
what's going to happen? Like, are we going to learn something? I was like, oh, did George do something really bad? Like screw him over? But then you realize, no, this is the truth of the business. George was
Right.
good. He took a chance
Hmm.
and he got the part because he was present and there was something extra and X about him. And that this is where sort of, technique and skill is one thing. You can be a master at that, but there's something you need something else, to
Right.
kind of push you forth. And he had that. So I thought that was amazing setup points to kind of launch somebody on this self-reflective journey while your daughter is leaving and all this is happening. And then I think the other film family of a movie star celebrity is sort of all your handlers,
Hmm.
and I think they do a pretty great job in sort of showing different layers of engagement. There's Emily Mortimer, who's sort of the hair makeup person. There's somebody else, and they're in it, but it's not their life. And then uh, what's her name? Bruce Dern's daughter.
Laura Dern.
Laura Dern. Laura Dern and Adam Sandler, like they're at sort of the totem pole of that.
Hmm.
And you can see the stuff that they've been through, and in some ways, the train ride and their conversations, they also feel like a little bit play-like, a little bit surreal because they're talking over each other and what have you. And I thought that was pretty funny and pretty cool. Uh, but eventually, I think the thing that I'm left with watching this movie, of course, all the themes of like regrets and glory, the
Uh-huh.
choices you make and family, what have you. But I think the thing that I'm left with is the relationship between Adam Sandler and George Clooney. Like that is sort of the heart of the movie, and to me,
So
that
what did? Oh, sorry, didn't mean.
yeah,
Just yeah. I
just
wondered
that
what did you think of Sandler then?
I thought he was great. I thought he was so moving in this part. I think it's the perfect casting for my money, I thought. And he was, and this relationship where you are this person's, the celebrity's like most intimate confidant,
Hmm.
but you are also on the payroll.
Hmm.
The life that you have, his daughter is going to, fancy tennis tournament, private coaches, all of that is, I mean, they are rich, obviously,
Right. Right.
but it's all through this. But at the same time, you have no real life because you're at the beck and call of this person. It's an abusive, toxic relationship in many ways, but yet you have somehow convinced yourself and maybe even genuinely consider that you love this person, because if you didn't, how would you even stay in it, right? You
Right.
would leave. So you need the love, but it's also not off of nothing, because without that you are just a normal person, and this thing has afforded you this life. So it's a very complex dynamic, and I actually like the parallel stories of the two of them, where George is having, or Jay Kelly is having this realization about life and regrets and such. So is Adam, where the regrets are he could have probably married Laura Dern because they had a thing,
They
bad thing
had right.
happened. He's
Hmm.
missing out all the big kind of things of his family back at home. His other actor who's sort of firing him because he can't be anywhere or be present enough for anybody else. And suddenly he's realizing my whole life is over and
Hmm.
I'm never going to get the thing that I'm looking for from Jay Kelly. So they're both on this parallel journey, and then it all kind of culminates at the end. And it's not a clean ending. Just because he stayed, Adam Sandler, doesn't mean that he's going to stay with him forever. Maybe he just stayed for the tribute in Italy and then he leaves.
Hmm.
And I love that kind of they drop you at that, we'll see. But the important thing is that in that tribute moment where Jay Kelly's family, father, daughter, no one is there, the one who's there is Adam Sandler. And I shed a tear when I saw them holding
Holding.
hands.
Hmm.
And Adam Sandler, at one point, he had this whole tear on his face because he finally got some level of recognition that,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
I mean something. And of course he does, but also not. So
Right.
I just, this is not easy to do, I think, from, screenplay level. And I give big props to Noah Baumbach. Like he's obviously a great writer, but he did this in a movie on a theme that can be quite cheesy and quite smarmy because it's about this stuff, but he also does it in a way that feels sincere, but there's some sharpness to it, like he always has. And the movie is pitched at a grand scale. Like this is probably one of his most ambitious. It looks great. It's
Looks
shot
beautiful.
beautifully.
Yeah.
they are in real location. The scope of it is great. Like I'm so pleased for him to kind of become like a, I mean, he's always been a great director of like actors and material and themes and blocking, but like to expand his scope like this way, I love when kind of directors are kind of challenging themselves and pushing themselves. And this could have gone horribly wrong, and I think it landed really well. It has flaws. Some of the train sequence stuff, of the bag being stolen and all of that. I was like, what is happening? We don't need any of this. And there's some things, there's some fat in there that could have been chopped off. But overall, I came off feeling quite moved and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, on the Sandler stuff, I agree with that the character is super interesting, and I think he did a good job. It was just very, for some reason, like I was struggling with Adam in this part as a sort of a secondary character. And he's so clearly a movie star, and I've never really seen him do this before, where like he is second fiddle to. They're not like it's not a two-hander movie. It's all George, and then yes, there's a
Right.
secondary character, which typically would be a character actor or not an A-list movie star would be in that role, or maybe you'd have an older ex A-list movie star. You'd bring in someone who's old to kind of come in and sort of do that. But there was something about this I was like, this isn't like why aren't they on screen in the same amount of time? Like something about that was just that kind of odd with me. I don't really. It's kind of hard to describe it. I'm like this shouldn't. If it's Sandler, I want to see more of him. And if sort of having him again be a secondary character, something that I don't. I think he's like too big of a star. And I don't know if this is the first time he's ever done this before. I was trying to think of like other movies where he's in it, but he's not the main guy. And I couldn't really think of anything. And I'm like, well, this is odd then. But I thought again, he did a fantastic job. I love him as a dramatic actor, not at all as a comedic actor. But yeah, there's something about this that felt just kind of off. Like the balance of the two characters were off because they're both like AAA movie stars, but one is playing like a secondary character. I don't know. It's hard to kind of describe. That was the only thing that was kind of
Oh,
again kind of
interesting.
odd
Yeah.
to me about the balance of it. But
I mean, I don't see Sandler as a movie star. He's a comedy star. So he's not a movie star to me. So, and even if he were, plenty of movie stars play supporting roles all the time because they're interesting and I think they bring their own gravitas to it. And I think just from his like body and body
he
language
was great in
and
this. Yeah.
sweetness and I think this was like perfect casting in my mind. Because I like the trait of Sandler that I kind of connect with the most is kind of that puppy dog sort of sweet guy, you
Mhm.
know? And I think that's what this thing really kind of captures. But sweet guy who's not dumb, who's sharp and capable, but can be a bit of a doormat. That's kind
Right.
yeah,
That's the two different sides of his performances are either like super
right.
neurotic, crazy person who freaks out all the time, or like, the person getting run
Yes,
over. Like
right,
Waterboy versus I don't know, Billy Madison.
right,
And
exactly.
it's just like how do you take that,
That's
in
perfect, I
a
think.
dramatic thing? Yeah, it's just like the balance of it, I don't know, felt off to me, but yeah, overall I would recommend, I didn't think it was bad. It was definitely worth watching. I think again Clooney did a great job like you said. So, yeah, I think you liked it more than I did, but I definitely did not dislike the movie. There are a few things that just sort of felt didn't quite land for me, but it was enjoyable. I had a good time. And
What
Italy
didn't
looked
land for
incredible.
you? Was it just that the Sandler movie star part
The
or
Sandler piece,
George
the
and
Clooney being like
Clooney?
not being Clooney or versus
Yeah.
Clooney, like I was sort of kind of couldn't really know what it was trying to do, so I kind of got lost in that a little
Mm,
bit. So it's sort of like decisions on the screenplay slash casting, I guess. And
interesting.
that but it never was bored. I was never bored, and it looked fantastic. Like whoever the DP was on this, like I don't really like Noah Baumbach that much, so I haven't seen all of his films. But the ones that I have seen, I never would have guessed by looking at a frame of this that he ever would have made it. So like you're
Right.
right, he definitely like up leveled himself in terms of how beautiful this. I mean, it does look absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like totally beautiful. So that sort of kept me wrapped, and just the story was interesting. I wanted to know what was going to happen to Clooney. But yeah, it just like I didn't fully connect with it. But I'd recommend people, click play on their Netflix. So I don't think it's playing in theaters anymore. I think it was for like 2 weeks, but
Yeah, I so wanted to go to a theater. I just couldn't find the time because I feel like this
same.
movie would actually be even more rapturous and kind of compelling on the big screen. Although it actually worked really well at home too. It still really was engaging and beautiful, but yeah, I think yeah, I would love to see it on the big screen. So if you
Me
can
too.
find it on the big screen,
Please. Yeah.
do
I mean, maybe if it gets some Oscar pickup, like it'll come back into theaters.
Yeah,
during some kind of qualifying runs, at least in LA. So maybe we can see it. See
yeah,
it there.
yeah. Uh, okay, so with that, maybe let's jump into our Clooney movies. So we always do this. We start with The First Love, which is basically what was the first movie that really sort of captured, your interest in Clooney. So maybe we'll start with you, Alex. What was your first love of George Clooney?
So my first love was one of the first films or movies he ever made. Because again, we can't talk about TV, so I'm not going to say
Right.
ER Pilot, even though the ER Pilot's incredible. It is the notorious Batman and Robin from 1997. So this movie is directed by Joel Schumacher, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Clooney, Chris O'Donnell, Alicia Silverstone, and Uma Thurman. The IMDb plot summary: Batman and Robin try to keep their relationship together, even as they must stop Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy from freezing Gotham City. So this movie, I was the first George Clooney movie I saw. I saw this movie in the theaters, was like incredibly excited for it. Like I remember watching all the coverage of Entertainment Tonight, watching the trailers in little QuickTime windows, downloading it for 30 minutes to watch like a 2 minute trailer inside of a postage stamp on my dial-up internet, machines just back in the 90s. And I remember thinking like at the time, I was disappointed that Kilmer wasn't coming back, but excited for Clooney because he's so cool on ER. He's like suave and like charming, and like I could see that working in with Bruce Wayne, and it wasn't like terrible casting anyway. And I thought like on paper. So I'll talk about Clooney, and then get your thoughts on that. We can go into the film. I think this is clear that he is not right for this role as much as I thought on paper it was going to work. This is definitely in his early film phase where he is doing a lot of smile, head tilt, nod acting. Like every scene, that's all he can do. Just like tilt his head a little bit, nod, smile, and like deliver his line. That's all he's doing. And the charm stuff does work as Bruce, I think, sometimes, even though the script there's a lot of issues with it. But when he's in that Batman costume, even though physically like his jawline looks great in it, it just looks like George Clooney in a Batman costume. Like it looks like he's in a costume, not Batman in a suit going out to fight crime. Like he was showing up at a Halloween party or something, and he happened to be dressed as Batman. Like I don't buy him at all as Batman. And there's so many scenes in this movie too that are like wide shots where I think it was pretty obvious that's not even him in the suit anyway. Like it's just probably a stunt double going around there, throwing some goons around, kicking and punching, and maybe they do a close up where he's like says some cheesy line, and they cut back to some wide shots. So it's like you don't really even think that it's him most of the time. So yeah, I think he doesn't really work in this. I'll kind of have a case for defending the movie, so we'll kind of get to that in a second. But I'm curious, like you said, you didn't know about ER. I mean, I'm sure Batman and Robin
Oh
played in India.
yeah.
So do you remember this movie, and do you remember it?
Oh yeah. It came out. It was like a big deal, and I don't think I saw it in the theaters. At least I don't have a memory of that. But I do
Uh-huh.
remember watching it on VHS, like pretty whenever that was available, and just absolutely finding it completely unwatchable
Yeah.
right at the get-go. I was like, what is even happening? And I had seen, I mean, I think we talked on the podcast, like the Penguin Batman is one of my signature, early movie going experiences, right?
Hmm.
So to then have this sort of as a follow-up, and at that point, like we talked about the movie, just like
Yeah.
not understanding slash not even comprehending the tone and the style of the movie. But to talk about Clooney, yeah, I totally agree. Like I hadn't watched it since, to be honest. Maybe I've seen scenes here and there. So this was
Yeah.
a I've watched it in like such a long time, and I was like, yeah, this is just somebody like Clooney in a costume at a Halloween party for sure,
Right.
and doesn't know what's going on. And I don't know. Of course, it's his fault to a degree, maybe, but I think just it's the movie's fault. Like, who is
Hmm.
in any character? Like, what is the character? What is, like it's
That's
just
true. Yeah.
so, who is doing that well? Nobody's doing that well. So, but I think what was interesting to me, just like from a physicality standpoint, even though, he's fit and what have you, and the suit is on and such, but he's not an action star.
Right.
You need like a different kind of physicality. And so that, in addition to the performance, in addition to no character kind of work, and like you said, embodying whoever he's playing, and the movie being like a total joke around him, the physicality of him doesn't lend itself to this character either, you
Hmm.
know.
That's a
Uh,
really good point. Yeah, he's not an action star. He didn't go on. I mean,
not
he's
an
made a
action.
couple sort of like run and shoot movies,
Right.
Peacemaker, The American, but he's not like running around punching people and, jumping off of buildings and things like that, like an Arnold, or so that, yeah, that's totally right. It's not. again, on paper, I don't know why I thought this was going to work, but it definitely didn't. And with the movie, like I remember not liking it when I saw it, but not hating it as much. I mean, I was still kind of young. I loved Batman Forever that it came out before it, and the other two Batmans. Well, I didn't really like Batman Returns. But yeah, I think this movie, and then I hated it for a very long time. But there's something about it where it's like if you sort of understand that it is just not taking any part of it seriously, then it's sort of all a joke, and then I find it watchable in some way. Like I don't watch it very often at all. I mean, I watch it for the podcast. I mean, it's probably been 15 years since I'd seen it. I don't like put it on a lot, but there's something about there's enough like bright colors. The sets are incredible. Like really large sets too, where there are these elaborate sort of things happening, and they might be dumb, like henchmen on ice skates, with hockey
I
pucks and
know.
hitting jewels around, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is just having like the most fun, but it like doesn't work at all. Whatever the hell he's doing, it's like all these ice puns that aren't even really puns. Sometimes just puts the word ice in something.
So
It's
bad.
so stupid that somehow like I don't know, it can be still enjoyable for what it is. So I think the movie I don't hate it as much as I used to. I think there's a lot worse now, sort of depictions of Batman through the Snyderverse than this. So yeah, and it was important Batman movie. I mean, it ended the Batman franchise for 8 years, and they
Yeah.
brought back Christopher Nolan on it because and stopped comic movies for a while. Actually, this movie was such a disaster. And I think it was Kevin Feige that said, who's the head of Marvel, that it's the most important comic movie of all time. Because if this movie hadn't been so terrible and failed the way that it did, they never could get the X-Men's, the Blades, the
Mm.
MCU, the Dark Knight. This movie had to die a horrible, horrible death for the genre to come alive. 8 years later, but.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you've probably seen it more times than I have. I've only seen it twice in my
Yeah.
life. So yeah, it's pretty bad and pretty unwatchable.
Oh, you,
Uh,
you didn't think it was fun to like even get like you were
no,
finding annoyed with it.
I was pretty annoyed. Even this, it's just too silly. And look, growing up, I definitely watched the Batman and Robin sort of TV series, which is
Oh
all,
yeah,
very
the
silly.
Adam West show.
But
Yeah.
there's something very charming about that because it's on a small scale. I think
Mm,
this movie not only is silly, but it's sort of this cornucopia of, so much that I found those two things kind of very jarring, to be honest,
mm,
kind of bothersome, really, versus if you just kept it at that kind of, DIY kind of Adam West show level, it would be kind of enjoyable. But this is like on steroids, like your lights are flashing. This movie needs like a strobe warning in the beginning. It's just,
mm.
no.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. It's like that's the I think maybe what they were trying to capture, but
It
because
seems
it's
like
also
it.
such a clearly like merchandising toy commercial
Oh,
ploy. Every 5 minutes there's a new bat suit for no reason, a new
totally.
thing that you could. It's like cynical instead of sort of charming in its like simplicity. Like the Adam West show
Right.
was silly, but kind of charming in how silly it
Very
was.
earnest.
And earnest. Yeah, that's a really good point. And this felt like just a cash grab. Like we don't care
Cash
about
grab.
Batman. We just want to have people buy, all this Mr. Freeze with this suit and the Batman with these wings and a Robin who can fire this. And we're gonna do all these sort of like in the end of the movie, they get into these new suits for no reason whatsoever.
No reason.
So I think you're right. I
That's a
think it's
great
like,
point. Yeah. The whole movie is like a giant commercial, essentially.
hmm
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
that's what it is. But
that's yeah, that's the beginning of Clooney for me. What what about for you then? What was your first love of George then?
well, I was gonna say it's pretty amazing that he was able to recover from this, because if this were to
Oh,
happen today to somebody, they would be dead.
that's a really good point, and we'll get to like my masterpiece, which I think kind of saved his career and was the most
Yeah.
important movie he ever made for his career and Soderbergh's as well. But you're right,
Yeah.
actually, this should have sunk him. I mean, he barely. I mean, the next movie we're about to talk about was a pretty mild hit, so he had one hit under his belt, but he was just from TV. Like TV stars weren't supposed to do this.
And just
So
goodwill,
yeah,
in
and
the
yeah,
80s.
totally. You're totally right. This could have just been like the David Caruso and Jade situation. But
Yeah,
anyway,
so many guys, have gone through.
yeah.
So, but my first love is, of course, it's a rom-com because they came to India a lot and we watched a lot of them.
It's not from
Uh,
dusk till dawn. I think you're surprising people.
I know exactly.
That's what they expected from you.
I know. But it's One Fine Day from 1996, directed by Michael Hoffman, starring Michelle Pfeiffer, George Clooney. Quick logline: the lives of two strangers and their young children unexpectedly intersect on one hectic, stressful day in New York City. So I don't remember the movie from my childhood watching this, but what I remember is just seeing two really attractive people on screen. And still think, like, I think Michelle Pfeiffer is one of the most beautiful
Yeah,
people
she's gorgeous.
in movies ever.
Absolutely.
I think
Ever. No,
always.
totally.
I'm
Still looks
just
incredible.
always so enamored by her. Like, how could anybody just look like this and but still feel like real,
Hmm.
Not, and that's a very tricky thing. A lot of really beautiful people, but they almost feel unreal, but she felt really real. So, and then George Clooney being very, handsome and what have you. Although I never found him very good looking, which is
Oh,
a strange
really?
thing to say, but
Huh.
just very, suave and handsome, like looks great from a distance.
You're
Very,
not into older guys then, it sounds
even when
like.
he was young,
Oh, okay.
just from
Huh.
a physical standpoint, I always felt him to be not like good looking, but just very handsome and just like a
Okay,
different,
handsome. I see what you're
very
saying. Yeah.
handsome, very
Yeah.
suave,
Okay.
attractive, but just not good looking. But that's one thing I remember. The other
Okay.
thing I remember is sitting with my mom and watching this on TV and just seeing my mom cheekily smile whenever George would come on screen. It's like an indelible memory in my head. And that's when I knew
She
that
thought he was attractive.
she thought she was
Clearly.
attractive.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew that there's magic
Yeah.
in this person, and it's very hard to, it's like a core memory in my mind, honestly,
Oh, that's
from an
cute.
early time. So, but I've not watched this movie since, and I watched it for the podcast. And I think we'll talk about the movie separately, but the thing that we talk about of kind of George Clooney being like really charming and suave, it's all in here for
Uh-huh.
sure. But this is right before he's the guy in the suit,
Right.
with the
Right.
big bucks and the big everything. Like there's something very kind of shaggy and guy next door about him. There's like a sharpness to him. He's a very kind of 90s kind of star who's charming, but also a little bit douchey, but you still root for him. He's kind of cheeky. So I think this is a great performance by him. And I feel like he never came back to this very often because he became the guy in the suit, like always put together and suave. Versus this guy's kind of clumsy. Like he's
Right.
making mistakes and what have you,
Hmm.
but he is charming and suave and attractive. He's not suave, actually. He's charming and attractive, but he's kind of clumsy.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you also see, kudos to him for playing like a dad in his early career, which most people don't do until much later.
That's true. A
You see
divorced
like
dad
a
too.
yeah, and so you see like a sweetness to him, the way he is with the child, and it's a classic kind of, I love, the 40s kind of Preston Sturges, madcap kind of comedies, right? And even Cary Grant movies. So there's like a great kind of rat-a-tat kind of energy between the two of them. And of course, like all rom-coms, like the movie lives and dies on the chemistry between its two stars, right? And they have such amazing chemistry. So I will talk about the movie, but I thought he was amazing in this movie. Just rewatching it after such a long time. What do you think of him?
Yeah, so I'd never seen the movie before. My sisters
Um,
loved it, so I was aware of it and seen it on and things like that, but I actually never like sat down to watch it. And in terms of George, I totally agree. I think not only is it clear like he is a movie star right out of the gate. I mean, like you said, this is one of his maybe his second movie, and he's acting next to Michelle Pfeiffer, who at that
Giant
time
star.
was still a giant star, box office draw, and she easily could have just like, blown him off screen because she was so bright and magnetic. But no, he's right there with her. Like they're very clearly matched. You believe that this couple could sort of have a little bit of chemistry together and maybe get together at some point, like they kind of hint at the end. And yes, it has still a little bit of his head nodding and smiling kind of thing. So he's still, you can tell he's not quite gotten rid of that sort of like sloppy bad habit, but he totally works in this. And I thought he was super charming, and for what the movie was trying to do, he had the right like energy for this for sure.
Yeah, totally. On the movie, like I was like pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this movie.
Oh,
Watch,
really?
yeah,
Oh,
rewatching it. I
yeah.
mean, it is obviously silly if you start like this is not a movie to intellectualize at all because if you start to kind of think about that, like why is this happening, and the whole thing will fall apart. So I was on for the ride of whatever is going on, and I think all the set pieces of how the kids get in trouble and how the adults get in trouble, I thought they really worked. They were funny and charming. But I think what all rom-coms need to do really well, I mean, there's several things like we talked, lead star chemistry. Number two, I think you have to root for this couple,
Yes,
and
right, of course.
you have to believe, like you said, that something could happen. And I think the movie, from a plotting standpoint, but also from just the way the two of them are with each other, it puts enough breadcrumbs that you are always intrigued by what's going to happen. And that's a great kind of plot device. And then the third thing I think, which is kind of clever about the movie, is that both of them are trying to sort of hold on to something and kind of figure stuff out. In some
Hmm.
ways, that the kids, barring Mae Whitman, who's George Clooney's daughter, who I was very annoyed with in the
Oh
movie. Like,
no.
what are you doing? Why would you walk around in New York City? Like, who does that? Like, it's absolutely insane. But apart from that, the two adults are actually more of the kids in the movie, which is sort of what I took away, that they
Hmm.
are trying to kind of grasp and do a lot, and things aren't working at work or what have you. So I don't know. I was charmed by it, and it was not your classic kind of rom-com that everything is fine at the end. There's a hint at it, but we'll see what happens. So it felt like the movie had some brains on it as well. Like, this is before rom-com just totally went in the tank, if you will. And it's New York, and the hustle bustle and the glamour and the fun of New York, it's all in there. So it felt like a cross between a Nora Ephron rom-com set in New York, as well as like a 40s
Hmm.
Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn movie. And I thought they did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, I felt that too. And like I thought the movie was totally fine, like fun. I wasn't bored. I thought the
Yeah.
stars were great. But of that mix you were just discussing, it definitely had that. And what I wish the movie had done was lean a little bit more into the 40s style and dial that up a
Mhm.
little bit. Like, yeah, okay, they were using split screens. That was fun.
Mhm.
And there was some screwball comedy elements in some pieces, but I wanted that to be dialed up a little bit more. The movie felt a little bit too like even keel or like one note. Like it wasn't manic enough.
Mhm.
Like I wanted a couple manic things to be happening or
Mhm.
more of that style. Again, the split screen when like they would go talk on the phone. I thought, oh, this is kind of
Yeah.
fun. Like you don't see this in like in rom-com,
Yeah,
especially in
the
the
phone
90s.
being mismatched, and I
Yeah.
love those kind of set pieces.
Me
Yeah.
too. And I
Yeah.
wanted just like a little more like screwballness. And there's some oddly like there wasn't enough music sometimes in it where it sort of felt like I wanted a score again to like up the action and make it heighten it a little bit because that's again, I think they were going for some of those screwball elements. So for me, it had the pieces there, but they made decisions to be a little bit too like, Nora Ephron style, which is more grounded and it's more like
Right.
silly and sweet, but not like that fun, yeah, that fun energy from like a screwball comedy. Like, did you ever see the film Down with Love with the
Yeah.
Raiders? Where, yeah, that is if they had sort of gone kind of in that direction to make it a little, I don't mean like production wise, but sort of really trying to crib from those older types of films, I think something could have been a lot more. It would have been a more of a classic movie. Whereas I thought this is fine. Like I would recommend it if people like Clooney or and also I love the 24-hour aspect. The whole thing is literally
Love
one
that.
fine day. I was like, oh, this is a great premise because then at the
Good
end, like you said, they
premise.
don't necessarily get together. Just like, okay, well maybe they'll start dating because in 24 hours you can't like meet, fall in love, and get married. I'm sure there's tons of rom-coms that do that, but I like that this one didn't. It was more realistic in that standpoint. Yeah, I just wanted a little bit more energy in it. Would have I
Mm.
think made this more of a 90s rom-com classic instead of a
Mhm.
solid entry in the rom-com genre and a great introduction of this side of George, which he doesn't really do a lot of rom-coms, honestly. He's done
No.
very few of them, and I think he would do, a good job.
He would be so good. I wish he'd done more of this. Yeah, I see that. Although, in a weird way, the more I think about it, I find it kind of refreshing because, just done doing Julia's episode recently, and all of her movies are definitely pitched, they're
Fair.
bigger, they're more.
That's
And
true.
there's something kind of sweet and more grounded despite all the farcical screwball elements. So it kind of stands
Hmm.
on its own, which is kind of interesting because yeah, you're either there or you're there, if you will. So I thought that was kind of charming, but yeah, that's the part that maybe doesn't make it super memorable. But I don't know.
Right.
Now I'm going to put this in my rotation when I'm craving like a rom-com. It's like I had a good time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would recommend it to people that
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Clooney and Pfeiffer and rom-coms. It was fun to
On
finally
Pfeiffer,
watch
I
it.
will say that they are mashed well together, but this is her movie. Like, she
Oh
You
yeah.
can't take her, not just because she's beautiful and all of that, but just her character and what she's going through. I love all of her work stuff that's
I
happening.
love
And
that. Yeah.
like she's so captivating. Like she is the star of the movie, despite George being really good, but he's an upcoming guy that you want to see more of. So it's like a great first love, I think, in
I
my.
agree, and I'm actually even remembering back to production notes I read that originally in the original screenplay, like the Clooney character wasn't in it or was barely in it. It was more of her story, and then they realized they
Oh,
needed a there was something with that
guy.
that I remember reading about this film. So maybe that sort of
Interesting.
has kind of the bones of it. Though again, it's probably all her too. I mean, she's so good in this.
He's so great. All right, let's jump to our masterpieces. What do you have for us?
So my masterpiece is from the 90s as well. It's Out of Sight from 1998. This is a movie directed by Steven Soderbergh, starring George Clooney, Jennifer Lopez, and Ving Rhames and Steve Zahn. And the IMDb plot summary: a career bank robber breaks out of jail and shares a moment of mutual attraction with a U.S. Marshal he has kidnapped. So this is the reason why this is a masterpiece. I do think it is his quintessential on-screen role and the one that, at least for sure, certainly for me, like cemented him as like, oh no, this guy is now going to be like a movie star that will be with us for decades. Because the couple films we just talked about, Batman and Robin, that hadn't really done well. You know, he was kind of buried in that anyway. One Fine Day was a moderate hit, but you know, not some giant blockbuster. Peacemaker sort of was middling, another movie that he did. But this movie, even though it did not do well at the time either, it was a financial kind of failure and disappointment. It was so lauded critically, and his performance especially, that it really did, I think, launch him to the stardom that he's in now. And I just remember when I saw this, it was on not in the theaters. I saw this on VHS, just being like, oh my God, like this is not George Clooney, Dr. Ross from ER anymore. Like this guy is like has a wattage of 1,000. He's in the suit, even though he's a criminal. So a lot of the movie's dirty. He's in these like, but when he puts on that suit in this movie and does the suit George Clooney like you're talking about, I'm like, okay, this is it. There's no more of the weird head nodding thing. Like he really has this magnetic on-screen charm and the definition of it. He is so charming in this movie. It is his little match, the lighter thing when he snips, snaps and the lighter turns on. He's got his suit. He's able to charm women and when he's robbing the banks. And obviously Jennifer Lopez, which, we'll get a little bit in the film, but I think this is one of the hottest on-screen pairings of any movie ever made. Like their chemistry is like insane. And I think this also has the best love scene ever put on film. But for him, I think this immediately was like, okay, this is George the movie star now. He's doing something totally a level up from all those other movies you mentioned. It made me forget about Dr. Ross. What? Anyway, yeah, I have a lot more to say about the film, but what did you think about Clooney
Yeah,
in
this
this
is
film?
definitely in that masterpiece category. I would have picked it as well.
Hmm.
I think it is him in the suit for sure, with all the confidence and the swagger and everything. But I think what makes it kind of incredible is that there is something not all put together and shaggy about this character. Because
Hmm.
this character is, though suave and all of that, he's kind of silly, you know? Like he's not always successful. Like, and they established that right at the very beginning when he's doing this robbery, walking out, and
And
then he's
gets
in the
caught.
car
Yeah.
and he gets caught. The car doesn't
Yeah.
start, you know? So
Yeah.
I actually love that. And there's something that Soderbergh sort of saw in him, I think. And it almost is sort of a mashup of a lot of the movies that George does with the Coen brothers, where he is more of the silly guy trying to hide the suaveness, which
Yeah.
sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. I almost feel like he's playing dress up with, with like black paint or shoe polish on his face. Like George Clooney has shoe polish on his face. Haha. That's sort of how I think feel about those. Versus this is, I think, perfectly calibrated because he is the guy in the suit who just has like a little touch of being just silly and not put together always. And
Totally. And I
so,
think another element too is he's like naughty in this. He's not a bad
yeah,
guy. He's just a little naughty and like that,
naughty,
makes guys more
mischievous,
attractive. A little mischievous. Okay, there's a little bit of danger, not a danger like he's gonna stab you or you're gonna get shot. But like, okay, this what's you don't really know exactly what to expect. There's a little bit of mystery in that, in the way that he carries himself in this film, because he is a criminal in this entire movie. He's a bad guy. He's
right?
is in jail for most of it. He gets put in jail back at the end of the movie too. So I think that makes him even cooler in some respect. Kind of similar to like Ocean's 11, right? He's playing a robber in that movie too. So like, he
Totally.
he can pull off that like suave, smooth criminal, to quote Michael Jackson.
Smooth
A smooth
criminal.
criminal.
But with this one, there's like I said, there's a he's not doesn't always get it, you know.
Correct.
It's sort
Yeah.
of great. And but yeah, his chemistry with JLo is amazing. All the scenes with the guys in the jail are amazing. He actually looks great in the overalls in the jail.
He does.
I was like, you look better in this actually. So, and I was noticing this, which you should have probably said up top, like another signature movie star quality is just like your voice and a dialogue delivery. He has such a
Totally.
signature voice, and you, if you heard a Clooney voice, you would know instantly, you know. I
Exactly.
mean, I almost put Fantastic Mr. Fox in our
Mm.
list, and it's not there. It could easily be a masterpiece, and it's all on his voice. And I think this movie does a great job of kind of showing the different scales of his voice as well. So, yeah, this is a banger,
Yeah,
basically.
that's a really good point. So yeah, in terms of the film, like this is my favorite Steven Soderbergh film. I think it is
Mm,
an instant classic. It's so fun. It's so well shot. Like the colors are incredible. The
right.
comedy is really funny. The screenplay is great. Every member of this cast just is on fire. Like they're at all the top of their games. And it also is a very important movie too because it sort of established a lot of things moving forward with both Clooney and Soderbergh. I mean, it saved
Mhm.
Soderbergh's career, who was sort of like in the dumps in the early 90s. And again, this movie wasn't commercially successful, but it was hugely critically successful. And then he went on to do his giant, Traffic, Aaron Brockovich, and now, he's one of the big guys. J-Lo, too. Like, I remember watching this movie, too, be like, wait, it's like a Jennifer Lopez is like she's not a dancer, she's an actress, and she is so good in this. This is
She's
easily the
very
best
good.
thing that she's ever done. Like, not
Totally.
only looking like a million bucks, but just having like this sort of sass to her, and like I love when she
Yeah.
like hits the guy with the freaking stick. She's like, "Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
tussle you" or whatever, and just like bats him. And she's so good in this role. And also, this is like Clooney and Soderbergh's when they first got together, and they started a company together. They worked together for like 10 years producing films. So it started kind of that piece. And then also Dave Holmes, who did the score for this, was a
Mm.
DJ, this like British DJ. And Soderbergh's like, come in and do a score for a movie. This is his first movie score. He went to do all the Ocean's 11 movies, a bunch of other
So
Soderbergh
good.
movies, and the score in this movie is so great. It's like just sort of fun and zippy, and yeah, I love this film. I think there's nothing. It's like a perfect, almost like a perfect movie. Like nothing can really go wrong here. What about you? Like when did you first see it, and what are your thoughts on the film?
Saw it later. Didn't see it when it came out. I think I saw it when I moved to the US and
Oh, okay.
I was very familiar, obviously, with Soderbergh and seen all the ocean movies. And so it almost felt like an original text kind of thing.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
going back, even though it's not pitched at the same register as the ocean movies, which are a
Hmm.
lot more stylish and suave and what have you, just the way they are put together. This is a kind of a grungier version of that, but
Hmm.
from the score to Clooney to kind of the interplay between the characters. And even though the plot is important, but it's not,
Right,
so is in the ocean movies. Like I never remember what happened. I never really fully understand what actually is happening in these
right.
movies, but it's really about the set pieces and the relationship between the characters, and that's what you get in this movie as well. And I haven't seen Out of Sight as many times, but whenever I see it, I feel like it's one of those movies that just keeps growing,
Hmm.
like it's still evolving in my head. So yeah, I love it. Maybe not as much as you do, not because there's anything wrong with the movie. I
Right,
just
right, right.
haven't seen it as much, uh, as opposed to, I guess we can jump to my masterpiece.
Yes, another Soderbergh movie.
Other movie, which I have seen many, many times, is Ocean's 11. No surprise, I suppose, from 2001, directed by Soderbergh, of course, starring the who's who of 90s and 2000s biggest movie stars ever. So I'm not even going to go in on that list because everybody knows.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think to me, this movie, and we've covered it on the podcast before, I think,
We have, yeah. The fashion episode, I believe.
fashion episode, yeah.
Yeah.
I think when I think of Clooney, and I've been doing this with all masterpieces, like it's not so much about is this their best performance, but more of like what cements them, that person in my mind of their persona and what they're best at. And
Hmm.
when I think of Clooney, I think of this movie.
Yeah.
There's something about, I think all elements of the guy in the suit who is suave, who is in control, who can assemble everybody, the who's who of Hollywood in the movie and in real life as well, because everybody adores him in Hollywood,
Hmm.
right? Sort of feels very emblematic of his status. but there is like a cheekiness and mischief to him. I mean,
Yes.
George, I should mention, like he's known for his pranks across Hollywood. Like he would play like these elaborate pranks on people, So there's sort of that twinkle behind the eye kind of thing. So I think to me, this embodies, his persona for sure. And it's sort of that shot of him coming in on the escalator
Escalator
in the
from Jay Kelly.
hotel.
They showed that in the montage. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the scene,
Yep.
that's the scene. So, but I think we talk about the movie in a second, but what makes it extra great in terms of his performances is his relationship with all the different guys in the
Hmm.
movie, and then Julia as well as the series goes forward, which is sort of kudos to him, right? Like he can obviously be the movie star and be the center of the movie, but the movie is pitched as an ensemble. And I think he's very generous and gracious in that. Like, like he's not hogging all the scenery, the
Right.
dynamics between all the guys, especially seeing him and Brad Pitt together is kind of a treat. It's
Hmm.
nostalgic for us, like as people who kind of came of age in that time. But just their dynamic and what they represent as movie stars, him being the sort of suave guy versus Brad being the cool, sort of like a little bit unhinged, always chewing,
Yeah.
but maybe being a little bit more street smart, as opposed to George being more put together. I mean, they're both criminals, obviously, but so I love that dynamic. And so, yeah, that's what puts this one at the top for me.
Yeah, I do think this is probably his signature movie star like role and performance, and this kind of cemented him, the success of this film, and his persona is this is like the George Clooney persona, like you said, in
Right.
a nice suit, sipping a whiskey, but like a classic nice suit. And I love
Right.
watching this film, especially now, and seeing Brad Pitt's style is so 2001.
I love it.
But it's so
The
like not
two-tone
classic.
shirts, I had those. They were bad, but he looks great.
No, but like Clooney is wearing a suit that like could work in
Classic,
any decade. Like he's
timeless.
like the classic look, and Pitt is like the fashionable, guy, and fashions obviously come in and out. But
Right.
Clooney is a classic. Like he's the classic look, and this is the classic look in this film. He's just
Yeah,
so perfectly suave and cool and the leader, but doesn't overshine the other guys, like you said. I mean, this was
exactly.
he's incredible in this. And then the movie too is like I think we talked about this in the fashion episode. I think over time I've grown to like it more than I did when I first thought. I thought it
Mm.
was okay. Now I definitely can appreciate the that it's one of those movies that it basically follows the heist movie formula to a T very well, and that is actually really hard because I feel like with a genre film like a heist movie, either you do the what you expect in the genre perfectly, or you flip it. Be like, oh, it's a heist movie, but like it's gonna be different. And those are like the two routes
Mhm.
you can go. And I actually think it's harder to stick to the genre elements and make a good movie. And this
Mhm.
movie does that, and it like works. Like this is what you want. You want the team to get together. You want them to see the blueprints. You want them to explain this. You want this thing to go wrong, but then actually it's not going wrong. And like assemble the team scene. Like we're going out and get it's like all the stuff. It's like paint by numbers, but I don't say that as a disservice to
Mhm.
the film. I love movies that do that really well. And this is, I
Mhm.
think, the quintessential heist movie, at least of our generation. This
Oh,
does
definitely.
what you want out of a heist movie to a freaking T. It's like perfectly executed. And I just think that again, it's very, very hard to do. And huge credit to Soderbergh for sure, and Clooney as well, who was one of the producers on the film. So
Yeah. It's interesting. Like it does it at the same time it doesn't because it's so not about the plot. Like I said earlier, like I never
yeah, but these
remember
movies are never
it.
about the plot. I don't
They
think
never
heist
are,
movies.
but you
Yeah,
don't even fully follow it, Like it's sort of
yeah,
uneven in a way. Like it doesn't fully make sense, but because if you were following to the T, like you would understand exactly. Maybe it's just me, but I've heard a lot of people say this, like you don't fully understand like how it happened.
no.
And I think it follows it to the T in terms of the beats of it, but then I think it totally undercuts it because it's really about the relationship between all these different people.
Hmm. The
And number
team. Yeah.
two, the people themselves, they're such a not just a who's who, but also what they represent. And I specifically, the more I watch it, like I love the older guys, the
Yeah.
guys who are not the three biggest stars that Hollywood has produced in the last like 50 years. It's the other folks, who kind of make the tapestry of the movie. So at one point you could be spending time with Casey Affleck and his brother and whatever is going on between them, or you're spending time with the Chinese guy who doesn't speak much but
Yeah,
is doing what he's doing. So I think the movie just that's what keeps it surprising, because you're not watching it for what happens, you're watching it for these guys, and how they interact with each other and also who they are on their
totally,
own.
totally.
Even the
Yeah,
guy
and
who's like sweating bullets, like I love
I
that guy
love that guy.
whenever he
Yeah.
comes. And then of course the movie, all of that is set in this like amazingly stylish movie with the music, the way it's shot, the way the blocking, just the zippiness of it. At the same time, the movie has tons of silence. Like it
Yeah.
feels like it's not like jump cuts all the time. Like if somebody did this today, or if AI made this movie, it'll be like jump cuts. This movie has like a lot of breath in it. So it's like a perfect movie, I think. And it just keeps growing better and better, like aging like great wine.
Totally. And like the two things I always force myself to remember because it's hard now looking back in 2025 and realizing at the time, putting movie stars together in a movie like this was very novel and unheard of. Like, oh my God, Brad and George are in the same movie with
And
Matt Damon.
Matt,
Like,
yeah.
what is going on? This is so new. And now, like, this is a dime. You put it on a freaking Apple TV show. It's like all these people. And then the second one, honestly, and this is coming from someone who like loves Las Vegas. Las Vegas at the time was not known as a cool place like this at all.
Mm,
The 90s were horrible for Vegas. They were trying to bring kids in. There was a big like the economy was going down there. It wasn't a glitz and glamour anymore. It was kind of it was boring. It was seedy. It's like a family destination. I really do think what this movie did is brought it back to this like it's a
mm,
sexy, cool place where like adults can dress in nice suits and like go out and like the Bellagio was like a new hotel at the time. There was like first sort of like top of the line, very expensive, classy, as opposed to like a Luxor, which is like a pyramid. And then we have one that looks like a castle. And like that was sort of the kitsch of Vegas that was getting washed away. And I really kind of credit
mm,
this movie to being sort of maybe the death knell of like the kitsch Vegas that was in there
mm.
in the 90s. I'm like, no, actually, this is a classy ass place. So I love that thinking back. Yeah, Vegas wasn't this. And this movie, I think, was helping to rewrite the brand and the image of what Vegas and how Vegas was seen.
I love that. I love that.
What a
That's
great film.
so true, actually. Yeah. Yeah, when I think of Vegas, I think of this movie now.
Me
So
too. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. Okay, so final category is our wild cards. What do you have for us?
So my wild card is another Steven Soderbergh movie, three in a row, which is kind of fun. It's started in a Soderbergh episode. It is
Yeah.
Solaris from 2002. So this is a movie, like I said, directed by Steven Soderbergh, starring Clooney and Natasha McElhone, and I think that's it. I don't think there's anyone famous in this, but the IMDb plot summary: a troubled psychologist is sent to investigate the crew of an isolated research station orbiting a bizarre planet. Now, this is a movie that is a remake of a very famous Russian film that's like 3 hours long that I still have not seen.
Yeah, I
So
know
I
that
went
one.
into this movie when I saw it when it came out because I'm a huge Soderbergh fan, so I'm going to see everything that he does, and was completely blown away by the film. And I'll talk more about that in a bit, but especially by Clooney because this movie is very much like completely non-commercial. This is like a year or two after Ocean's 11, and Soderbergh too was making these big commercial movies. This movie is like very quiet, not a lot happens. It's very cerebral. It's very confusing. You're talking about not following the plot. This movie does not hold your hand at all in terms of what's going
Yeah.
on. And Clooney is a person who's not suave, sophisticated. He's a broken man. His wife is dead, and he blames himself for that. He's not smiling throughout the entire movie. I don't think maybe one or two times when they show the flashbacks to him meeting his wife, he's smiling, but it's a very glum and grim and sort of like nihilistic Clooney, which is something that we don't see very often, and that's why
Mhm.
for me this is his wild card performance. Not only because of the fact that it is a different type of role, but also the register. I don't necessarily think of Clooney as an actor who does a lot of subtle acting. It's a
Yeah.
lot of, and maybe this might sound negative, but a lot of mugging he does to the
Yeah.
screen. And that's what we love about him. He's like, Danny Ocean, he's
That's the
mugging the
movie
screen and
star
stuff.
acting.
Totally. This movie, I don't think there's a lot of it in here. And he's trying to convey a lot of things very subtly just with his face because, again, there's very little dialogue in the film. And I think that there's a moment in the movie where he first sees his wife appears. She comes back basically. He goes to the space station. His wife is dead to investigate something, and then a version of his wife appears in his bed next to him, and he's like startled by it. And he gets up and he's sort of like looking at her in like excitement, shock, scared, and like I think that scene is the best scene he's ever done in isolation. And I think it's something that is just not normal to him to sort of convey emotions like that with no dialogue and just like get all that together on just his face. That yeah, I think this is something he's not really done much of this anymore, and I think it also just really works too, which is why I think this to me is his wild card.
Hmm.
Yeah. Then before getting into the film, what did you think of Clooney in it? Had you seen the film before?
Yeah, we did. And we covered this on in the podcast a while back. This was one of your movies. I forget what episode it was on. So that's when I wa had watched it the first time and then
Hmm.
watched it for this pod. No, I think it's a great wild card pick for him because he's not the guy in the suit at all. There's no there's no ounce of sort of that charisma. I mean, there is innate charisma in him, but it's not put on the forefront.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about my wild card, who is also a broken man. But like the difference between this and that one is that this broken man is a lot more subtle, like you said, and it's a lot more leading with emotion,
Hmm.
as opposed to my broken man is sort of just unraveling, and there's a lot of anger and rage and confusion and lack of clarity of what is even right,
Hmm.
versus this guy, he knows what he wants, and it's driven by love. It's driven by what he misses. That's his wife. So it's a very subtle and emotional movie at the same time, pitched at a register that's pretty cold, just about how it's kind of set up and where it's at. So yeah, it's pretty. But I'm always surprised when I watch this movie that he made this movie.
Yeah,
It
I
doesn't
know.
fit in a lot of other things he's done. It kind of reminds me of Brad Pitt making Ad Astra, which is like way later in his career.
Hmm.
Very similar. Like that's more about him being a dad, I think, or his relationship with his father. I
His father,
forgot his
yeah,
father,
relationship with his
right?
father, yeah.
But this is about his relationship with his wife. So yeah, it's a pretty cerebral movie, and I've only seen it two times, and I
Hmm.
actually want to watch it again, and I definitely want to watch the original of
Yeah, I
because
want to at some point
yeah,
too. But I
yeah.
hear that this, so there's also a book too, and that this movie, the Soderbergh one, deals more with some of the themes from the book than the Tartovsky film,
Mm,
which apparently adds, it does some different things. And I think the themes in this movie too, I think are really interesting. It always does make me think and feel just around like,
mm,
what is memory? Because essentially what's going on is this Solaris, this planet, is going into the memories of these people that are there and pulling out, basically avatars of recreating people from their past. But it's only of the memories that they have of them, which is never, you only know someone so well, right? Like I know you for a long time, but like no one really knows you other than yourself at the end of the day. No one does. So I could clone you from my own memories and sort of say, this is what I think Quran would be, and you would be created, but it's not really you.
right.
Even though I might want it to be, like if you're gone, I'd want to bring you on the podcast and continue this with your avatar. But it was something about it would be off, and that is what is sort of like, is it worth it? Right. So what I think all of these folks on the ship are going through this of like, is it important to have someone even though I know that they're not really my wife? Right. Once he realizes this isn't really my wife, but I really want her back. But do I want a facsimile back of the
Right.
version of her in my head? And so I think that is always just really interesting about memory, basically, and memory and then love and those things that I really, yeah, I think this movie is awesome. I love the score of it. I love that it's only
Mhm.
90 minutes long, but it
Right.
feels very long, but not in a bad way long. It
Yeah,
just
it's very meditative.
meditative. That's a great way to put it. But and also just beautifully shot. I think it's one of
Beautifully
Soderbergh's
shot.
best shot films. He's his own DP, and he just does such a good job on this movie. And something also that he's never done really big sci-fi like this. This is a sort of a wild card for him in a way,
Right.
to go off and do this. And I think at one point James Cameron's supposed to make the film, so it wasn't even something he was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then
Please, no.
realize that like he would have made something that was going to be more like action oriented instead of
Right.
cerebral, and that's why he basically was like, I think Soderbergh, you should make this. He's still a producer on the film, but I think
Uh,
this works much better than what I imagined the Cameron version of that. It's gonna be not as good as this, which is again is also one of my favorite movies. I really do like this movie a lot. I watch it, every couple of years. I find it really, yeah, really powerful and interesting.
yeah, no, that's a good one. Well, I guess we can go into my wild card and my
Let's do
broken
it.
one. It is Michael Clayton from 2007, directed and written by Tony Gilroy, starring George Clooney, of course, Tom Wilkinson, Tilda Swinton. quick log line. A law firm brings in its fixer to remedy the situation after a lawyer has a breakdown while representing a chemical company that he knows is guilty in a multi-billion-dollar class action suit. I mean, I'll just come out and say that this is Clooney's best performance
Hmm.
entire career. It's a wild card because this is the guy in the suit who is completely unraveling.
Right.
Never knew from the very beginning why he is in the job he's in, what life choices he's been in, and he's sort of been running around with it. And then all these events happen with Tom Wilkinson's character and such that just start to unravel him and start to make him question about the choices he's made to a degree. But even then, he's not the moral center. Because that's the other thing with Clooney, that because he's so likable and kind of Hollywood follows him, like you sort of trust Clooney to do the right thing. At least you did in the
Hmm.
2010s. I don't know about that anymore, but he kind of had that aura versus this guy. There isn't that actually. It's very gray and unclear even to himself, you know. So the fact that he's able to play all of those shades, and there's anger and rage, there's confusion and
Yeah.
self-doubt. At the same time, there's tenderness as you see between him and his son and some of those scenes. I think it's a fully realized person who is no longer Clooney. You might watch the movie thinking, oh, it's Clooney in a suit, but
Right.
you're in for a surprise. And then we'll talk about the movie separately, which I think is one of the best movies of the last
I agree.
25 years.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fantastic film. But yeah, I also think this, I would not say no to this, putting this up as his best performance ever. I think it is interesting also seeing that he plays a fixer character, which is supposed to like clean things up. So you would imagine, oh, he can do that by like Danny Ocean talking suave, like out of sight to get things done. Absolutely not. Like from that opening scene when he goes over to the guy who like hit someone with his car, he's like very direct. He's like, "We're gonna call this lawyer."
Right,
And I'm not even gonna like give you any bedside manner either. We're calling the lawyer, and this is how we're gonna do this. And the guy's like panicking. He's what? This is it can't be. We got to be able to do something. What if we hide the body and move this thing? He's like, no, this is the only thing you have, and we have to do this in like the next 10 minutes. Like he's very direct, matter of fact, which isn't usually how Clooney operates. He's like, oh hey, glad hand, flesh in the flesh to get stuff done.
right,
So I love that he's able to like turn the expectations on the audience on its head immediately and have you completely buy it like that he could be doing this stuff. And I think you're right in that like I don't think he even knows at the end of the movie whether he did the right thing or not.
no, I mean the
Um,
famous last scene is like chilling, right? Like just him alone in the car, like, okay, this has happened, but what does it all mean? Is it right? Where do I go from here? Like this is a unclear, unassured character. And
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that ending shot too of just
brilliant.
him in the cab, just a one shot, cameras locked on him, and it's I think in like 2 or 3 minutes, no dialogue. That is a hard thing for an actor to pull off. To keep your attention, to make you feel things, to go through all the different emotions he's going through simply by different expressions and how they're changing. And then this is getting back to something I was talking about with Solaris too. This usually is not his strong suit. Is not subtle face acting. It's mugging
No,
and sort of like, hey, but he pulls it off. It's just incredible. He's so good in this movie, and yeah, this movie is just absolutely stupendous. Like I remember when I saw it in theaters for the first time, I was like, oh my God, like instant classic. And there's sometimes when you walk out of a movie, like this will be, going down in history. We're always going to be talking about Michael Clayton in certain conversations. Like I didn't think George had a movie like that in him, to be honest. This type of like adult, sort of intelligent, complicated
right,
thriller drama, as opposed to the more fun and zippy like Ocean's films,
right,
or Oh Brother Art Thou, or Out of Sight even as a fun sort of caper film,
right.
right? This is not any of those things.
Totally stands out. I mean, this is a movie that you almost can imagine like De Niro or somebody making, right? In their sort of
Yes.
heyday. And I don't equate De Niro with George Clooney at all. But yeah, the movie is amazing. Just the way it's written, it's like a very literary, writerly movie. At the same time, it's a thriller. It's very entertaining. It's actually it's heart-wrenching. Is you could argue that this is probably one of the best like post 9/11 movies made, right? Like really dealing with the aftermath of that and
Uh-huh.
big corporation and corruption and these people just being sort of lost of what's going to happen. But you would not think that that movie would be entertaining. It actually is.
Mm-hmm.
entertaining because of how well it's written, the way it's sort of mounted and propulsive, and then every single performance from Sidney Pollack to Tilda Swinton to Tom Wilkinson to
Oh yeah.
everybody is sort of at the top of their game, and every bit part and every scene is like amazingly done. And it's again a great movie, a thriller movie, which is that you forget what the plot is when you rewatch it.
Hmm.
So it kind of keeps you on your toes and you get lost in the characters and the drama between them. And then on top of that, the movie delivers some iconic scenes like the Tilda preparing before the speech and
Oh
Clooney
yeah.
coming to her at the end with the horrible cell phone, all of Tom Wilkinson's his breakdown or the scene with the baguettes. I mean, these
Yeah.
are like iconic scenes, that are etched in your memory, which you would not expect from like a drama heavy kind of movie talking about really complicated themes. So it's too much in a good way. It's kind of genius. I don't know how Tony Gilroy is just Tilda
Yeah.
said this in her Oscar speech. Tony Gilroy, you walk on water.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's. I mean, Andor. Just plug that
Yeah.
show that he did. Was one of like the best TV shows ever, and I hope that he continues to make movies too, because it's been a while since he's directed something. But a lot, I put it all. Yes, the cast is great, but I just really put it this at the feet of the writing, and the direction too. Like he's able to. There's a style to it, but it's not
Yeah.
distractive. And it feels. Yeah, like the look of the movies feels ambiguous because they're dealing with a lot of things of like characters questioning. Okay, I know I'm doing something bad, but is that bad? Should I be judging
Right.
other people that are doing bad? Like you do work for, there's a ton of people that work for very terrible corporations, but
Right.
they either rationalize it to themselves or it's sort of like, well, there's nothing I can do. And then if you don't work for those corporations, do you judge those people or not? Or you have to understand where they're coming from and like all the stuff with Tilda Swinton, what she's dealing with, the pressures of being the new CEO and the first woman and all these things. You kind of get why she makes these horrible moral choices because of the position that she's in. And do we judge her? Maybe or maybe not. And I don't think really the movie, well, maybe her character, the movie judges, but
But everybody sort of kind of nobody comes out clean actually.
right.
Like Tom Wilkinson is talking to this young girl and like what is
Yeah, so
happening
weird.
over there? Like
Yeah.
this, and nobody is clean in this movie. Kind of like real life mostly, right?
Yeah,
So
oh yeah, totally. And also too on this most recent rewatch, I just sort of love every time I see them pull off the classic I'm gonna make you confess because I have a hidden tape recorder in my jacket bit that is like the cheesiest thing that shouldn't work. And you should be like groaning and like throwing things at the screen in this, but it totally works. He pulls out the
right,
cell phone. I'm like, oh, that's right. There is the classic, the old tape recorder in the pocket to make you, it's like the James Bond saying like, I'm gonna now tell you my plan scene,
right,
in the Bond movies. It's kind of like that, but it works in this movie, which is just a testament to Gilroy, I think, of this old classic trope that should
yeah,
not work, in a movie like this, but you don't question it, and it's still this big dramatic moment in one of the famous scenes, like you said, of this
yeah,
film. And then also, I think honestly, too, just kind of like maybe kind of bring it all full circle a little bit. I don't know. I was surprised after doing all these movie rewatches of like this dude has made some incredible films. And I
yeah.
think then it got to me because I watched all the movies and then watched Jay Kelly actually today. And that montage at the end, I was like, yeah, George Clooney really is something special. And I would never kind of put him in that. I mean, to me personally, he's awesome and cool, but he's not like a film legend who, graces silver screens in the same way that Cary Grant or, Jimmy Stewart or Al Pacino have. But after this rewatch of these films, like this guy can actually put
No,
some
he
awesome stuff on
has.
screen.
He's
He's
definitely
got something.
has. And to be honest, like what I'm surprised by more, especially thinking about and watching our wild cards or some of the other movies too, that I was surprised by what a good actor he is.
Yes.
I always knew he was a great movie star, and he's in that league of Cary Grant and such. He's made some amazing movies. It's a pretty diverse career and such, but I didn't think of him as like a great actor. I think he is, which maybe is a good segue into what we think he should be working on next, which I think he should quit the directing job, number one.
Yes. Yes.
Number two, like focus on these character-driven parts, that are complex and interesting. And I'm so glad he did. Jake Kelly's really great in it. Maybe do something in the Michael Clayton, maybe pick the Sidney Pollack character role, in a movie like that that's heady and complex. And he's of a great age, I think. He looks really great
Yeah.
and he's always looked really good, but he looks great being older. And so yeah, I would like him to do some really great complex layered parts where he's maybe screwing with, the suave exterior and exposing the brokenness or the emotional vulnerability or what have you, like he's done in our Wild Cards and Jay Kelly. So I want to do more of that.
Yeah, yeah, no, t totally. Like for me, it's similar that like he definitely, needs to not waste his time directing. But also I think it's important that he is with a top tier director. I think a
Yeah,
lot of the last like 10 or so years, he's worked with Cohen's, and obviously now Noah Baumbach. But he seems to be picking material over like the filmmakers, and it clear even just looking at all the movies you talked about. I'm other than One Fine Day, who I'm not sure who directed that. Like these are all directed by like, hugely talented other creatives where he is just
right,
used as an actor in the situation as opposed to more aspects. I mean, yes, he's been producers in some of these, but he wasn't direct. We didn't pick any of his his directorial movies. So that's I wanted to put him in more capable hands is sort of what I'm
yeah,
saying because maybe at that point he will challenge himself because like okay, now I'm working with Scorsese, so I have to really bring my A game now and like not sort of coast on my Casamigos like $500 million or whatever and feel like I don't really have to act anymore because he's great. I think it's a disservice to us as an audience that he just picks his own projects based on his taste, which I think is just now terrible after thinking about it for a little bit.
yeah.
So this is
Well,
something. This basically what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that Noah Baumbach is what I want him to do. Pick
right,
a very talented director where he's now the actor in it, and I think Jay Kelly's probably one of the better movies he's made in a while. Not that again, I didn't even love the movie. I thought it was very serviceable and okay, but like look at his filmography the last 10 years. Like most of the movies are mediocre to bad. So
right.
I want him to keep doing this. Maybe
I
get back together
agree.
with Soderbergh. I mean, I think they are talking about an Ocean's 14, so that could be a way back into this.
Yeah, although those movies are also kind of their own league, right? So
Fair.
work with some heady material. Like the De Niro part made me think of now that Heat 2 is being cast, and I know they need younger
Oh,
people. Maybe there's like an older guy in that, and I can see a guy in the suit is sort of broken or corrupt or something, like play like a character of like Christopher Plummer or somebody from the inside,
oh,
and like that's what I want him to do,
he could work in a Michael Mann movie, actually. Yeah, maybe they
Definitely.
should talk to him about Heat 2.
I think that would be great. So what do we have next coming up, Alex? I think we have pretty much wrapped our Clooney episode.
Yep, our Clooney episode is come to a close, and we don't have many episodes left this year. But the last episode we're going to be releasing this year, that's around a new movie, is going to be one of the bigger movie releases of this year. Is Avatar: Fire and Ash. This is the third Avatar film. We'll be going to see that together, and then giving our thoughts on it. And for folks that watch on YouTube or who don't watch on YouTube, maybe who listen to us, make sure to check out our YouTube channel because we'll definitely be posting some cool video content around our experiences going to Pandora. I cannot wait to return to Pandora. So that'll be our next episode.
Yeah, excited for that. Well, this is our episode on Clooney and Jay Kelly, and hope you enjoyed the conversation. As always, like us, subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts, and drop comments. We love hearing when people put in comments saying, "Oh, you missed that movie," or "I love this choice." So we always love that. So yeah, let us know what you think of Jay Kelly or Clooney's filmography or all of our hot takes.
Yeah, some pretty hot ones in this one. Cool. We'll see you on Pandora then.
Good. See you next time.
Bye.